Okay, shall I? So, hi, I'm Jean-Christophe Tisseuil. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Oasis, and happy to have this opportunity. Hi, Hamish.
Hi, Jean-Christophe. Hi, everyone. Hamish White, CEO of Mobilise. Really happy to be here doing this video interview with Jean-Christophe.
Yeah, so maybe we were preparing this discussion, and what is eSIM? So let's start by that, right? So eSIM is a SIM. It's just delivered in a different way. It's the plastic SIM that you know today will certainly continue to exist, but will be delivered remotely to the customer device. So the SIM will come embedded already in the device that you will buy, like this one. And when you will have chosen the subscription you want to have, the operator will download this subscription inside your phone without the need for you to go to the shop or do anything than a few click on your device or on your internet. So just a new experience. It's coming along. It's already available in many devices across the world. And it's a great experience. Hope you will have the chance to try it soon. Um, so what do you think, Amish? How do you see the market going on this?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think obviously there's the recent announcement with from Apple around the iPhone 14 being eSIM only, and obviously they're not the first. There's been I think Motorola Razr was the first eSIM only device, probably 3 or 4 years ago. But from a consumer eSIM perspective, the technology's been around a long time. Maybe hasn't been being adopted as quickly as maybe some of the industry might have liked, but probably due to some of the key stakeholders kind of slow walking the technology a little bit. There's obviously some debate around that. M&O is a little bit concerned about risk of ease of switching. Maybe some of the larger stakeholders in the industry, like the SIM manufacturers, also being a bit concerned about cannibalization. But I think someone like the gorilla that is Apple, getting behind the technology and kind of driving the industry stakeholders forward, I think it's going to have a really big impact on the industry and adoption overall. In particular, I think one of the areas that eSIM opens up, because you don't have those kind of obstacles around physical distribution, having to have the plastic SIM card delivered to the customer. And eSIM can be provisioned over the air. It opens up other industry opportunities as well, like embedded connectivity into, say, for example, financial services industry, the travel industry. Those industries being able to embed the connectivity product much easier into their core products. So I think over time, what eSIM is doing is opening up new market opportunities, but then changing the way that operators and key stakeholders are kind of working with the SIM.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing also we see is that some operators are just putting in place the eSIM first, meaning that today when you buy a new subscription and a device from an operator, usually their policy was to give you a plastic SIM first. And many operators are now moving to eSIM first, not only because they have an eSIM operation for some of them, but also because it's the thing to do. And iPhone 14 in the US will accelerate that. Uh, Not only because it's eSIM only, but also because for many operators, it's a way to reduce their dependency on plastic SIM. There is a chip shortage globally. Many many companies are suffering and having sourcing challenges. And the fact that the SIM is embedded in the device just reduce the pressure on the supply chain and the logistic. So that's also an important point to have in mind. Don't you think, Amish?
Yeah, absolutely. with the production of plastic SIM cards being heavily reduced with eSIM, it's a huge environmental impact as well, which is fantastic. Jean-Christophe, I was going to ask you actually, being an expert in eSIM, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were around at the start when the eSIM specifications were being developed by GSMA. How many eSIM profiles do you think can be stored on the device, on the eSIM chip, the UICCC on the device? Is there a limit on how many can be stored, or is it effectively unlimited?
Yeah, so I was in charge of the eSIM specification in GSMA, and it's a good memory to have worked with the ecosystem to specify this technology. The answer to your question has two axes. So the first one, what the technology can do. So when we have published the first, say version 2 of the HGP22 eSIM specification, I have tried with the help of a few operators to see how many eSIM I was able to put in my and I have put 7 or 8, something like that. So technology-wise, there is the memory limit of the chip that is available to support the SIM implementation in the device. But now, from a specification point of view, I think the ecosystem, and it includes everybody in the room, so the OEMs, the operator, the UMs, are looking at replicating what exists in the physical world, in the physical SIM world, so dual SIM phone. So what we see is that in many cases we will have devices that will support dual SIM or dual eSIM. So you will be able to have 2 eSIM activated at the same time. Now you can probably store more subscription in your eSIM and able to swap depending of the usage. We know that in some part of the world you have 1 SIM for data or 1 SIM for voice, and you just move from one to another depending of what you need to do, and probably this will allow some users to have maybe 2 or 3 SIM for data, for example. We can imagine that, or people traveling, so having a SIM for Thailand when they are in Thailand and a SIM for France when they are in France. But that's the way it's implemented. It's 2 active profiles at the same time.
Got it. Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the interesting things that when it comes to how the consumer eSIM market will evolve is, I think the technology has been around a long time. I think the user experience has improved quite a lot, even over the last 18 months or so, I think. So specifically talking about kind of QR code versus in-app provisioning, and from I guess my or our perspective at Mobilise, the in-app provisioning is by far the best user experience. But I feel like as adoption grows, there's going to be, as there's always the case with kind of user experience design, the more people you have using the product, and the greater the feedback loop, and the more people that are feeding into the development of the product, and improvements will follow. And I feel like your point specifically there about 2 profiles being active at once, I think that's something that will evolve also with additional users using and feedback, because I'm not sure that the user experience today around just the 2 profiles being active at once is something that is well understood in the consumer industry. I think the way that the iOS kind of manages the different profiles on the device, I think there's probably room for further improvement there as well.
With the dependency that modems are dual SIM, dual standby, so they are not multiple SIM, multiple standby. So there will be also needs for technology improvement to go beyond 2. But yeah, you're probably right. In the future, we will be connected all the time, everywhere, anytime. So some people will need probably more than 2. I am happy with 1.
Yeah.
And it's eSIM.
Different use cases for different users, isn't it?
Yeah. In terms of perspective, Hamish, what do you see? Is it going to? How is the market going to grow in the coming years?
So I think it's interesting. I think that user adoption, I mean, there's a lot of reports out there about, kind of on the one hand, penetration of eSIM capable devices, which is one metric, but then adoption of eSIM is another metric. So users actually using eSIM. And then there's another interesting metric, I think, which the GSMA published something about recently, within the last 12 months or so, which was around awareness of eSIM as a technology within the consumer market. And I think this is a big part. It's awareness and education on what eSIM can do. And the statistics on awareness and kind of education of eSIM is still particularly low. So I think with the announcement of Apple being eSIM only is really going to drive awareness in the consumer market. So people are going to be wanting to learn more about what eSIM is and how it works. But interestingly, if you have a look at Apple's website post the launch, the iPhone 14 launch, they've published, a bunch of FAQs and explainers and guides about how to use eSIM. And I think it's that kind of material and content, and that it will evolve as well. It'll get, the base of knowledge will grow, and there'll be more information out there as time goes on. But I think that will be a really important part. A big consumer focused brand like Apple really getting behind, driving education and awareness in the industry is going to be a huge contributing factor to it growing, more. And I think actually it's going to be Apple that's going to influence the other stakeholders in the industry to drive adoption, at a faster pace. So the operators and probably the SIM manufacturers as well to kind of adopt eSIM at a greater rate.
And the government, because we have to keep in mind that for the moment eSIM smartphone is not allowed in China. So obviously in a country that is manufacturing a certain number of the smartphone we are using globally, it's a challenge, especially for the local manufacturer. So obviously the release of this limitation in China is expected by the ecosystem and will certainly accelerate the adoption with the acceleration of device available, especially in the mid and low range, which is the mass market smartphone. Most of the smartphones on the market are low and mid-end devices. So the sooner China change their regulation, the better it will be for the ecosystem. But it's back to education, I guess, that they need also some education and help to understand the benefit of eSIM rather than the risk.
Absolutely, and that's the really, really good points. And I think just a slightly separate thread but related to regulation and governments is there's movement in some parts of the regulators around Europe, and referring specifically to Ireland, we were involved in a consultation to the Irish government related to eSIM. It's publicly available on the Irish regulator's website. And the context of that consultation is whether the Irish regulator should enforce eSIM onto the operators in Ireland. So as regulation, you're required to offer eSIM as a service to your customers, and their motivations for doing that is around porting, so speed of switching between operators. As everyone will know, the standard porting process. Well, I'll talk about the UK, but Ireland's quite similar, and there's similar processes around Europe. But you have to initiate the port request. Sometimes that can be over an SMS or whatever, and then you have a reply, and there's a whole lot of interworking that happens between the operators. Can happen, from anywhere from 2 hours up to 2 days, depending on which country you're in. And then you have the physical SIM card being delivered. But what's interesting with eSIM is obviously the provisioning can happen within seconds. So you don't have to wait for the physical SIM card to be delivered in the post. So it's an interesting angle into how the adoption of eSIM could accelerate if the governments look at kind of imposing on operators this eSIM as a way to facilitate easier porting for competition purposes. Then that's obviously going to drive adoption of eSIM quite significantly, I would suggest.
Yeah, true. A word of conclusion, do you want to start?
Yeah, thanks. So, well, I mean, it's been fantastic to talk about, what's a really exciting, technology and Mobilise as a business. We're heavily invested in eSIM with our strategic partners in Oasis. It's really exciting times. I think what is most exciting for me is, we're starting to see some early kind of shoots of opportunities outside of telecoms for embedded eSIM or embedded connectivity via eSIM into adjacent markets like financial services and travel and those types of things. For me, I think that within the telecoms industry, there's a huge opportunity, but outside the telecoms industry, the total addressable market is huge. So that's really exciting for us, and we're looking forward to what comes in the future.
Yeah, same here. So Oasis is pushing hard for eSIM adoption, especially in both world, in M2M and consumer, because the M2M world also remain an important and probably one of the reason eSIM started in the first place. The pre-provisioning of SIM was a challenge when you manufacture something in one country and you deliver it on the other side of the world. So that was the initial reason for eSIM. So yeah, looking forward the acceleration of market adoption. Video like this one are great because they are opportunities also to give the message that eSIM is a SIM, that education is an important mean for people and taking their smartphone and choose the option to use eSIM rather than a SIM when they buy a subscription. So something to do more often. Looking forward to the next discussion, Hamish. Thanks for the time.
Stuff.
Bye.
Cheers.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.